All right, well, seeing that it is 6:30, I call this meeting of it is currently a school board meeting to order. Would all join me for the pledge of allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic, stands one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. So this is a meeting of the withdrawal committee that was voted in by the towns of Langdon and Walpole in March of 2025. It is subject to RSA 195.25 procedure for withdrawal. So the first thing I'd like to start off with is some introductions. So if you could just give your name and your role here, that would be great. I'm going to include our members of the public as well as we go around. So, Ryan, can we start with you?
Yes, Ryan Scooter, Aquid Select Board.
Joel Levert, Alsted Select Board.
Nate Chafee, Langdon Select Board.
Mary Schwabe, Alsted Representative. Shelley Andrus, Charlestown School Board.
Kevin Keith, Langdon School Board.
Jenny Donovan, Walpole School Board.
Sarah Vogel, Aquis.
I'm Alyssa Bascom. I'm the current chair of our school board. I'm an at-large member from Charlestown, so I will not be sitting on the committee, the withdrawal committee, but I'm here to help facilitate the first meeting.
Trustee Bushy, District Clerk.
Deb Manso, assistant interim superintendent for the district.
Carolyn Bose, Walpole Select Board.
Mr. Neal?
Oh, Gary Neal, Charlestown.
Steve Alessio, Selectman Walpole.
Steve Brown, Treasurer Walpole.
Cheryl Mayberry, Selectman Walpole.
And Mr. Leroy Watson?
Leroy Watson, Fall Mountain Regional School District Moderator.
Thank you for all for being here and paying attention. I can't see who we have online, but we are Zooming live. So there are people, this meeting will be recorded, so they can be watched on our YouTube channel at any time for anybody who's interested. You can direct people to go to it if they want to be updated. On that note, this committee with the 5 school board members representing each of the pre-existing districts, the current towns, and the 5 school board select board members are subject to 91A rules and regulations. So all meetings will be posted. They will be warned within 24 hours. They will be recorded. And so we must have a quorum and everyone. You're all well versed in this information. So if there are any questions about any of that? Seeing none. All right, has everybody had an opportunity to read RSA 195:25
Yes.
on? You can join any one of these seats anywhere.
Like, Nate's over there. How are you?
We've just done some introductions, so would you mind introducing yourself?
Katie Gallagher, Langdon Select Board. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. So 195.25 is the procedure for withdrawal to determine whether it's feasible and suitable for a town to leave a cooperative. At this point, we have 2 towns who have voted to call for this study. So it will be up to all of you to look at what that means. There's a very specific procedure, very specific information that needs to go in the report that needs to be presented to the State Board of Education by October 11th, 2025, 180 days from the first meeting. I don't know exactly. So it's 180 days from today.
Thank you.
Are there any questions about what your charge is? Seeing none, I would like to ask for recommendations for chair of your committee.
I would like to suggest that since Walpole and Langdon have brought us to this table, that one of you be chair and the other be vice chair. Because you will, and eventually you will have to go forward before the chair will go before the DOE to present the feasibility study. So probably there'll be 2 feasibility studies. And you could, as chair and vice chair, you can take care of that too.
You got this through. I think we've kind of informally thought about it and, I'm willing to be chair if you're willing to muddle through with me. I haven't been chair.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, seeing that, is there a second to the two nomination? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing the process. On that note, like I said, I am available to help support in any way. As are everybody else at our central office. At this point, I will just continue. Do you want me to?
If you would, appreciate that as I get my feet out to make doing this, sure.
Sure. Is there anybody who would be willing to step up as recording secretary for this committee, keeping the minutes, keeping the calendar postings?
The other question is, do any of the select boards have a recording secretary who would be willing to be our recording secretary? And I believe there is a stipend for that or no?
Not at the moment.
Not, okay.
I didn't come prepared with that information, whether our recording secretary could do that.
Do you want to take that back to your boards and then bring it to your next meeting and decide if it's going to be somebody from your town or somebody on your committee?
Our recording secretary is about to have child.
Oh.
So, we're about to not have a recording secretary.
It would be about timing. I'm gonna glance over and get a read from my fellow select board people that we think that that would be feasible. I know you have worked with everybody else.
Yeah, I think he has the skills to suit.
I will, okay.
She's on several boards.
Yeah, that's kind of why I was looking for a read. She helps with a lot of her boards, so I will look into that. I don't know if anyone else has any ideas other than that. I will check with Walpole, board secretary, to see if she might do it.
Shelley, did you have a question?
Do have a question. Do, Kevin had mentioned co-chair, but we didn't discuss that, so we're just going with the chairperson?
She mentioned chair and vice chair. It was all kind of the same motion.
Oh, all right.
So the other option is we do have that list of people that were willing to join us for the other study that we have compiled. So if your recording secretary won't do that, then you can reach out to. Is this okay, Misty, for having her reach out to you and you can get the list of people that that express an interest in helping with the reorganization study, and maybe they'd be willing to be a recording secretary to join that role. So
That's a great idea. Thank
other
you.
people who might be.
I'll share those with the committee. Yes.
Right, any of you have any other questions regarding any sort of requirements, structure? All right, the next item on the agenda is to develop a meeting schedule. This is a pretty heavy lift for a 180-day report, especially since you're charged with two reports, one being for Walpole and one being for Langdon, whether it's feasible and suitable and all the things that go along with that. One thing.
I do have a proposal to kind of kick us off on that, is if we look at maybe same day. Whether it's, and I would look, you have followed the group through the last study that this happened, whether it's same day every other week, same day. But that's kind of my thought. What I would throw out is the second Monday and fourth Monday of every month, whether it needs to be every week, whether, I'm just putting out ideas and, wondering what everybody thinks about just keeping it as a routine schedule. So we know versus jumping around.
I agree with that. Something that kind of popped up was possibly we could keep it on the same schedule for till June when we no longer meet. Keep it on the same schedule as the school board meeting. And then meet first. This group would meet from 5:30 to 6:30. And then the school board could then continue on from 6:30, and that way Langdon wouldn't have to change their their Langdon meets, their school select board meets on Monday. evening at
Oh, I see, okay.
7, right?
And
And
you're-
you want
are
to
you-
schedule when?
We're just doing every other week now,
Okay,
so we do every other Monday.
Every other Monday.
But if we did 5:30 to 6:30, it wouldn't matter, we'd just go there at 7.
Okay, I can do 5:30 to 6:30. I don't know. Then everyone else.
Madam Chair, if I may, I could do the second Monday, but not the fourth, as I'm also on our planning board.
Okay. Others? As far as when does the school board meet? Second, oh, I didn't choose that, but yeah, we could. So you weren't able to do one time a
Yes,
month.
the
Okay.
last Monday of the month would not work for me.
Any other input on that?
The first Monday of the month doesn't work for me, but I'm free. Thanks to the change in my life, I'm free all the other Mondays.
Okay. Okay, so we have one person that can't do the fourth Monday, everyone else can do the second and fourth. Are you the only person,
Well, if we start banging Mondays around, that is our select board meetings as well, but usually it's the first, third and fifth. For us,
and what town was that?
Akron.
Akron. And 5:30 to 6:30 isn't gonna work for you.
Our meetings typically start at 6 or 6:30, and at least a half an hour drive time between here and there.
Okay, any suggestions?
I can do,
Attend by Zoom?
or earlier in the day, like 4:30 or 5,
I don't know.
but I have a hard stop to get pressed down.
My thought is we would try while the interim time and you're part of whichever committee you're on. That will still be able to occur. Is it possible to attend by Zoom? So then you don't have the drive time and you can participate
If it meets quorum.
Doesn't in person.
in person.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not sure
One thing-
whether it sounds like Mondays aren't good for you. So we could do the second Monday, and then is there another day of the week that anyone wants to suggest? No,
Can only do Mondays.
okay. Well, I'm not sure where to go from here.
One thing that has
Hard
worked
stop.
quite well for us is a doodle poll where we could send out some different times and maybe you could find a second meeting that most people could attend.
Mhm.
And then you could work from there because you will need to create some subcommittees and things so people may be able to participate in subcommittees at different times with smaller groups. And then come back and report once at the main meeting and work through that all together once a month.
So would it be worth, yeah, well, then that's what I was gonna jump to is if the fourth won't work and we're not gonna jump around on Mondays, because I know that Walpole has other meetings on Mondays as well that I need to be part of. So, what if we have one whole group meeting a month where everybody reports out on the work and then the subcommittees are meeting as they are able to arrange independently? How does that sound? So we'll do the second Monday of every month as a group. Well, we've gotten that far. The time, we agree on 5:30, 6:30.
Can you say that again, Carolyn?
Are we agreeing on 5:30 to 6:30 for our time? On the second Monday?
And then that moves the board meeting
6:30.
to 6:30.
5 to 6? Is that better? I'm just throwing out a time.
That would be my preference.
5 to 6, okay.
So-
Yeah, please holler. I mean, this is
Well,
the
Shelley,
time
are
where
you
we can make it
available at
work for everybody.
I'm already slightly confused. So during the first withdrawal, this committee went through, maybe I should look at Joe. Were there subcommittees that were meeting?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
At least 3 subcommittees, right? This is probably
It really takes up your
life town.
I would say an hour for a meeting is not nearly enough time. You should be planning on at least a 2-hour meeting.
Yeah.
And there was at least 5 subcommittees.
Mhm.
On the last withdrawal. I was on the committee. And an hour before another meeting. Bad. It's difficult. And the other thing you have to consider is a lot of what you need has to come from the administration. And I don't know if they'll be able to turn information that quickly. Didn't work the last time, so.
So you got it done last time. What I'll defer since you're sharing it, or while I'll ask you is, how did the scheduling work for you all?
I think it was the same day every month, but we didn't restrict ourselves to an hour. I don't think you can do it in an hour, guys. My personal opinion, I haven't been on it.
No, I respect that.
You were there.
I was there not on the
Right.
full committee, so I
Right.
really more or less observed things, and my life was a whole lot different back then. I
Yeah.
had fewer committees.
Me too.
Misty's just made a good suggestion for the board members here, that maybe we consider only meeting once a month from now till October and do less workshop type things. Put all of our business on one meeting and leave the other open for this, so that you are not constrained by any time on that other Monday.
I won't meet through the sun,
Think we may have to.
because otherwise we won't have time to get our work done.
You're talking about the withdrawal, I mean, not.
No,
No, we do our
The
workshop
school
type
board.
things on the Mondays, June and July and August.
I think it makes a lot of sense functionally. I guess I'm looking to you as the chair. Because I personally don't want, and I think everybody feels this way, but at least for me, I don't want to exchange one set of problems for another set of problems.
Mhm.
So I don't. I mean, in terms of pacing a lot of the things that we've set out and kind of stated that we're already going to take a whack at, especially from what I understand, a lot of policy stuff. I don't know, I'm not like, Alyssa, tell us what to do, but do you feel like that's a reasonable?
I really do feel that it could be reasonable. I think if we work on policy through the summer, almost specifically, because we don't normally meet. We have one meeting in June, we don't meet in July or August. And then we take those 2 months and have a single meeting. We can do a lot of policy and anything else we might want to start planning for the following year. Then we add our workshop, day-long workshop. I think we'll be in good shape. If that is amenable to you. I mean, it's really only for May and May, really, that we would lose one. Shelley, do you have any thoughts on that?
So just so I'm clear, the proposal on the board, on the table is that we would meet once a month for this committee. Would not have a school board meeting after this committee, so it could last longer. And then on that probably the second Tuesday.
Monday.
Sorry, Monday. And the fourth Monday then would be the school board meeting, starting at 5:30.
Right.
Okay, I'm just make sure I'm clear.
I'm fine with that as long as it does not cause any disruption in the education of kids. So if something comes down policy wise or whatever, and it comes down on a Monday and Misty and Deb needs to meet with the board, then our first priority needs to be this school district. And the students and the staff, whatever they're needed, because there could be some waves coming. And I think we just need to make sure we have our priorities, at least this school board. That's all I'm saying.
Thanks for
Yeah,
that.
I'm just
I
a
agree with
little
that.
nervous with some of the stuff that might be coming down the pike. And I don't want to be sidetracked.
Thoughts on that? Do you think it's feasible?
I appreciate that little caveat there, and I won't be shy in letting you know that we do need to meet.
All right.
So we're in agreement that we're going to meet the second Monday of every month, and we will meet starting at 5.
30.
Yeah, so that was 5:30.
5:30.
You want 5:30?
I threw the 5 round.
We have I'm just double checking. Anybody else for 5? Okay, it's a big group. So we'll go with 5:30 with the aim to be done by 7:30.
And while you're on that note, do you want to meet in this room you have a different location that you are looking for, just for IT.
Okay, I had assumed that this would be the place and how it would operate. Just because everybody's here and we all need it, know how to get here. Okay, and we'll have it here. If works.
All
Already
right,
reserved anyway, right? Because of the school board, so.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, I will defer back to you around these pieces and.
sure. The next item on the agenda is simply for informational purposes. The deadline, of course, to report is 180 days from your first meeting, which is today, so that sets the clock running. So October 11th, 2025, you will have to get in contact with the DOE, got on the agenda to present the report, whether it be we think it's feasible to move forward and this is how we're going to do it, or we don't find it to be feasible and suitable. And this is the end of our findings and we ask to be let free of this obligation. So that's that. There, at that point, it would be a majority of you who votes in favor. We were to put forward a plan to the Department of Ed to be brought to the voters in the next March cycle. Or you can also submit a minority report at that time as well. If there's a group that strongly feels that it's not in the best interest of the two towns. To be fair. And they don't have to be the same. You can absolutely find that it's feasible for Walpole and not feasible for Langdon. You can find that it's suitable and feasible for Langdon and not for Walpole. So you are not beholden to be exactly the same. When you're gathering the information, you interpret it as you need to. Report it out as you need to.
Functionally, why is it set as one entity? That kind of seems like a,
What do you mean as one entity?
if I'm hearing you correct, it's one contiguous report.
No, I'm
So it's
sorry,
two-
maybe
okay.
I'm not clear on that.
All right.
It is two reports.
Okay,
I just meant that you could find differently. If you
Right.
find that at Walpole, it is feasible, you can find that it's not for Langdon or vice versa. So it's two very separate reports that have to be made.
so what is the interface as this group meets? In terms of, I mean, if you're kind of, for lack of a better word, litigating a pretty big issue. And there's conceivably different needs and different objectives. Why, and I'm not saying this adversely, but why is it one group then? Does that make sense?
And then there's gonna be subcommittees, right, for the two reports, potentially, I would think.
There is one committee because it's the same people who would have to serve on both. So you could try to find two separate dates and focus only on Langdon for one and Walpole for the other. Or you could determine amongst yourselves what those subcommittees look like. And it could be, some of them might be the same, like how to deal with buildings could be the same information for both. Because you're gonna treat them the same. How you do transportation could be very different. Trying to think what else is in that without looking at 195 in front of me. But how it gets interpreted, budget is certainly very separate reports. But it will be up to you as a committee as you're getting into this and determining your subcommittees, what that looks like.
Does that make sense, Jen? That some will be pretty similar because it's essentially the same thing to have a town. Separate
I
or
guess
not
I'm just-
separate, but some things
Yeah.
will be different financially, two
Right.
different towns, two different situations.
I guess I have concerns about how meetings are gonna go if. I don't know, it just seems like we're trying to run the same race, but it's a different track and it seems like a lot of time could possibly, with good intent and pride in everybody trying to be friendly, that a lot of time is going to be spent simply educating the other ones. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I thought the objective was that, like, for example, Walpole would meet about fulfilling these obligations. I guess I'm just concerned how it all works. Does that make
Walpole
any
meaning
sense?
you and I, when you say Walpole.
I don't even know what that means. Anymore. I don't know. I guess.
Okay. No,
I
no,
guess-
that's fine. No, I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding. So the way I have seen it, and this
Yeah.
may be naive, this is my first time through, and please, anybody weigh in who was part of the last or has information, but the way I'm seeing it is where there's similarity in the separation of figuring it out, getting the information, the buildings, the district rules, who owns what, all of that. That could be one committee and be somewhat, getting the information could be somewhat clear. I'm sure there's gonna be bumps and figuring things out. Whereas the financials would be two separate committees, and a committee with this many people might be two people. It might be more as needed. It might, that's what I'm seeing with how many people there are in the different topics that need to happen.
So it's a I swear I'm not being flippant.
No,
It's a unified front to study how to divide if it's feasible.
I think we just vote at the end, once we found the information, we recommend for or against. And there's a for report and there's against report, assuming that there's a split. Am I describing that right, Steve?
Yeah, I think the biggest burden is gonna be on the administration. Right, because the filter is going to change. All the reports that are gonna be needed to make these decisions will have to be Walpole unique and Langdon unique.
Right.
And so that's where the biggest burden is gonna start there.
But that wouldn't change if you had more than one, if you had two committees.
We're
We're collecting all that information anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm not
Yeah,
saying you
yeah.
need two committees, but I'm just saying the burden of it's
Yeah.
gonna be more on the administration than on the committee. Because everything's gonna have to be split.
But what we're talking about is how many committees and how we're gonna work the committees.
Even each subcommittee,
So was my description of
yeah,
a small committee of 2 or 3 people may address one topic that can potentially apply mostly to both towns, whereas we might have a separate committee for each budget.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, in the previous one that I was on, we had to deal with 3 buildings. At the time, Charlestown had 3 schools.
right.
We had to figure out who owns those schools, how much did, any money transfer when they joined Fall Mountain,
Improvements.
whatever, improvements, all of that stuff. Whereas in this committee, we would be looking at 4 buildings, 3 in Walpole and 1 in Langdon. But to me, that committee could be just one committee looking at 4 buildings instead of 3.
Applying different numbers.
Just
to different-
keep the numbers separate, don't mix Sarah Porter in with
Right.
with the
Right.
Walpole schools.
Right, but
But,
understand that.
But that makes sense for that committee, whereas we might have to have 2 committees, one to figure out exactly what the district looks like without Walpole, and another one to figure out what the district looks like without Walpole and Langdon, and then, and then you've got well, what if it's just Langdon? And so that's like 4 different things that I can, Lori Schmidt's gonna lose her hair over this.
I think
It's gonna be
we
tough for
list
her.
it's final.
And because you you gotta break out all of this stuff. I mean, it was tough on Jim Fenn back 6 years ago, 7 years ago. When he had to break out just Charlestown. And I can see poor Lori thought she was gonna finally be all caught up. And now this comes.
So, I know we have a shared docs file. Has that been shared out
Yeah,
yet?
because we still need to set everybody up with SAU60
so-
email.
I started like reading the minutes from the last time and they're actually, they answer a lot of these kind of questions people have about how we're gonna get things going. So I would suggest if you have time, read those minutes to understand how that committee last worked.
And they're up on the school website.
They're not,
The-
I'll send them to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You have
So
to-
helpful,
You
thank you.
have to use some other email address because you killed mine.
I know.
Well,
We're gonna,
on that
we're gonna
note-
reinstate it, Joe.
I've like a whole list of questions. I'm trying to keep.
I just want to address, before we move on to those questions, that everybody on this committee will get a district email address. There will be a district drive for all of the information, all of the questions. Misty has just come up with a great process in order to ask questions and get them answered. And so you'll know exactly where to go for all of that information. So you can then grab it and interpret it as you need. And that will all be set up through IT in the next week-ish. So be on the lookout for that. And I think that was about it in regards to that part of the organization. Okay.
So when, my understanding of, after reading the minutes, that when Charlestown came to that first meeting, this first meeting, They came with a binder. From their individual study that you worked through, does Walpole or Langdon have that information for the rest of the committee?
We don't have a binder. We do have on our website, we have the information and conclusions from the committee from last year that went through the separate research.
So you may want to print those out and make sure we all have copies.
And if you want to see it before I can print it out for you, it's on the Walpole website. Town of Walpole.
Does Langdon have,
Oh, we didn't do one of those studies before.
and make sure my understanding is correct. Is this withdrawal feasibility is to withdraw from the cooperative? And that Langdon, and if they did decide to withdraw, Langdon and or Walpole would still be a member of the SAU.
Yes.
Okay, right. So the makeup of this, whatever's left, would be there would still be an SAU school board. There would still be a cooperative school board for whoever's left. And then their own towns will have their own school board. Is that correct?
That is my understanding.
Right.
Okay.
So if I could clarify, I talked to Matt Upton this afternoon for clarification on that. To withdraw from the SAU, it is a different process than this one. And in essence, let's say that Walpole withdrew, then our SAU would not be a single district any longer. It would be a multi-district cooperative, or SAU.
I say you would have a multi-district school board. Right?
We didn't talk about school board, but
Okay.
we did talk about,
Right.
so for example, the superintendent would be the superintendent for the SAU for this board and also for the Walpole board.
Mhm.
Or the Langdon board, should Langdon withdraw.
But, I'm sorry, but since Langdon or Walpole would still be responsible for some of the SAU administration costs,
Exactly.
they would need representation somehow on that at the SAU level, which seems to me that there would be an SAU school board and a cooperative school board for running the cooperative.
Yeah, that may be, we didn't get into
Okay.
that,
And I
into
think-
those.
What I learned last
Questions?
year is I think potentially what it would be is something that upon the withdrawal, if it were to happen for either town or both, that then that would be negotiated and figured out collaboratively versus dictated. I can be wrong about that, but it's something where if I know through the research committee, they looked at different SAUs and school districts and the ones with multiple school districts, but it's one SAU. And while I don't mean to bring this up in a way that we're looking to, or the committee was looking to copy SAU 29 Keene, they're a good example of, there's SAU 29 Keene, but they have their outer towns. So it's Chesterfield, Westmoreland, all of those towns that contribute to Keene, they're under the SAU 29, but Chesterfield and Westmoreland, they have their own school districts.
Mhm.
So they're in charge of those pre-K through 8
Right.
education pieces, but they still are part of the larger group.
Yeah,
And
I
then the
understand.
larger SAU. And what I'll say is that they have as I recall, there are different levels of representation with SAU 29 as far as how much participation the other school districts have on the overall school board that represents the SAU.
So I understand that, but there is a cooperative in place. And Charlestown and Ackworth and Alsted are not leaving that cooperative, so that cooperative would not be dissolved because Langdon or Walpole left. Right, so there's still, that cooperative still has to exist. So somehow that all has to work in there. We also talked about making sure that Walpole and Langdon had legal representation.
It would be a good suggestion for the towns, not necessarily as part of this committee, but for the towns to have somebody who could advise them in all things regarding what's gonna happen.
Yeah, because we use that a lot in the last,
Absolutely,
The last
Charlestown
time.
had their own representation as well as the school
and the
district.
school district did too, and so
For
there,
consultation.
there were times when we would just be at a spot where we'd be like, yeah, but, and so we would check with our respective councils and then it helped it helped so that it wasn't like, no, I disagree.
Right, and it becomes opinion and it.
Right.
Having authority in the laws.
Understood.
Makes you well versed in education law, not just, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um. Did your question get answered in there? Or did it get larger? Okay, do you wanna? Stop.
On the financial piece, it's my understanding that if a town elected to conduct such a study, that the town would incur a fee or a charge, right?
So we had a warrant article.
Right.
Asking to do that and it failed at the voting booth. So we do not have an appropriation to hire somebody to work for this
So
study.
conceivably, if, I mean, is there a tracking measure? So that, you know, just as an example, if Walpole outpaces Langdon with the needs for whatever timing and attorney's fees, we're all just,
It's all in the
It's a
district.
district committee at this point.
Every town will
Additional
pay for
funding.
it.
So it will come
and
out.
what is gonna be the the kind of real-time accountability? Because what I don't think should happen is, at the end of this, whatever the conclusions are, people then find out, oh, this is the money that we could have put towards children that we just spent trying to all teach each other law school. Like, is there an accountability measure that, is it periodically, or how do people find out?
There hasn't been in the past.
Okay, well, I would like to respectfully propose, clearly would not come down tonight, and maybe it would be something Matt would inform, that there needs to be accountability for what this costs in real time.
We can talk about that.
Okay.
We do have a person who is starting to gather some of the reports that will go in that shared doc file. And we will know what that costs, and that was through the current budget by moving some things around, and we chose to fund that. That funding ends with the end of the fiscal year,
Fiscal
June
year.
30th.
Mhm.
So we'll know up till then what that person has incurred. But after that, it's all gonna be in the course of the job for that department at the SAU. I mean, if you were all to keep track of your time, I think you'd cry. So on that note, I do appreciate that you're all sitting around this table. This is no easy lift. I appreciate you being here.
One more question from history from last time. The subcommittees that we create do not have to be just the members of this feasibility study. We can bring in additional people, correct?
You can bring in experts, you can bring in community people who have a passion for certain things to interpret and write the reports. You just happen to be the ones who will be voting on that,
I'm just.
is my
So-
understanding.
But in this is a piece that I didn't cue into. So what you're saying is these subcommittees don't just need to be made up of these people while we are all taking in the information. That's very helpful. to know.
Right, so I think especially like for Langdon, we can't do it all, so maybe we can bring in additional people from Langdon to help, same thing with Walpole, but. I think as we get into like the cooperative or whatever's left with that. We might ask our two at-large members to maybe join that committee as well. They don't have to actually be, members of committees don't actually have to have anybody from this. On it, correct? They can be anybody, subcommittees.
Well, I think we invite people into them.
Right.
This whole committee as a group invites them in. I just don't want to get the impression that, I don't know, I go to Charlestown and I get 3 friends that I want to join this committee. I mean, I'm being, you know, humorous about it, but I understand.
This committee has the ability to include anybody they want to, even as the larger committee, not just the subcommittee. As part of the it's part of the RSA.
And I didn't pick up on that, and did anyone in the piece that in this element of it, is there an approval? Do the people that we're inviting into the subcommittees need to come before this group? Before,
I
'cause I didn't-
can't answer you about the subcommittee, but my understanding in the RSA is that this committee can bring on additional members. I would assume you would vote as a full committee to bring additional members as this larger committee, as voting members.
as the larger,
think
as
we
voting
appoint them.
members.
That's the way I understand it. You appoint them.
Yeah, we appoint them.
Yeah.
This,
Okay.
yeah, such other members as may be appointed by the committee, being us,
There you go.
per RSA.
So maybe not voting members? That's the way you understand it?
Final voting is this
Just this
This
committee.
committee.
Got it.
Because that's what, because you, in the last time, you kind of were you came to all the meetings.
I
But you
took the
weren't,
minutes and did that kind of thing,
But
but I
you
was never
weren't-
a voting member.
you weren't a voting member, right?
That's not clear.
We can double check that with Matt.
I have it here.
Okay, of course you do.
Thank you.
I think once Misty gets us the minutes and stuff from the Charlestown withdrawal, that will give us a roadmap.
I think
I mean, the biggest issue is Charlestown came prepared to leave the district. That was the biggest thing, so they already came to the table. Maybe a little bit ahead of schedule, because they had most of the information. It needed to be confirmed, some of it needed to be added, some may have not been correct. But they at least had the roadmap already mapped out to leave completely. So,
And one thing that I'd like to add is that the RSA has changed. Has changed since Charlestown made their appeal, so
Of course it has.
that's something to,
There's
Well, the
no
only-
RSA up there that they don't touch every day.
right.
The change to
They
the
wouldn't have a job
RSA
if they didn't change.
was not regarding the information that needs to be in the report or any of the timelines, but simply about how it can pass in your towns. And that's changed twice. So we've been through that with the district's legal counsel and determined how that went through. Is that document in the file?
It will be,
Okay,
yes. Let's share it with everybody. Yep.
it certainly, I mean, in the last time around, it was simply clear as mud, absolutely. We didn't have a majority, it failed. This time, if the town of Langdon votes, 2/3 majority, then it can pass even if the rest of the district fails by a simple majority. If the rest of the district fails it on a vote of no by a supermajority, it still does not pass. So there's both sides to it now. If the towns pass with a simple majority and the whole district passes with a simple majority, my understanding is that it passes and goes forward.
And is it a single vote or two separate votes? Two separate votes.
Yes, correct. But I'm sure you will discuss all of that amongst yourselves numerous times because
ad nauseam.
So
every
what
time
is
we
the
think it's
process
clear.
in getting, for those of us that haven't done this? What is the process for intelligently getting yourself, I don't even know who I'm looking at this point. Getting yourself, I'm not even clear as to what I mean, I understand the articles, but what the charge is. You know what I mean? Like what,
In the shared file, Misty will have the 195.25, right?
Which I have it linked right into your
Which
agenda.
will
Right,
give us instructions, the exact instructions. And then we'll have a shared file with the last withdrawal, probably the Articles of Agreement Committee stuff, because we always go back to that. Walpole's gonna share what as a town, what you guys had found. And then we just start from there, yeah? You as our chair will take us through this smooth waters.
Smooth as anything.
Yeah.
I cannot find this report on your website. You know where it is on your website?
Yeah, I found your
It's under meeting.
minutes, but I did not find the report.
It is not.
Should I let you?
They're in meeting minutes.
Just caution, based on experience, right? That the first report that was submitted by the committee failed at the DOE because it didn't contain enough information. If you follow exactly what the RSA tells you to be submitted, they will kick it back. Because they want all the information, just like you've been asking, Kevin, that, you know, what are you gonna do with an SAU? Who's gonna run the district?
Right.
You're gonna ask things like, you know, how are you gonna deal with transportation? How are you gonna deal with special ed? Is gonna be at the top of the list, right? So all those things they're gonna wanna see, even though it doesn't call it specifically in the RSA. I would hope that they'll get a copy of the Charlestown withdrawal report
They will.
as well as the minority report as well. Both of them have valuable information in.
So if I'm hearing you right, reading those reports can be informative, but they're not a who's on first, right?
They'll be very informative.
You'll be very informative. They're informative.
There's no, I can't tell you that there's a roadmap that if you follow it, it's gonna work. It's gonna be easy. It's just,
So I bump into Joe Schmo in town and he's like, hey, Jenny, you know, what's the deal with this? I'm gonna just go, I don't know, I'm gonna read the reports.
if the challenge is it feasible and suitable for the town to withdraw from the school district? That's the challenge. And how you come up with that, you know, I don't know. I mean, in some cases, it may not look feasible. In some cases, financially, it doesn't make sense. And I think this is an alternative out here, right, that I hope the committee will think about, is that if we start off with the idea that maybe this isn't the best thing to break up the district, the reorganization that has been proposed by the school board might be a better path.
I just want to be clear, this committee is only to consider 195
That's
colon
correct.
25.
That is absolutely correct.
And we vote to either recommend or not recommend.
Right,
Our charge is not to look at other avenues of how the district may or may work better.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure.
that's clear.
But I appreciate your point relative to my questions, that, you know, that I understand, so.
Jenny, there's a link for the RSA on the agenda that Misty sent out, and it'll take you right there.
Working on it, thank you.
Are there any other questions in the eyes of the committee? Any other questions from the public?
We just confirm when we're meeting next.
Absolutely, as far as
They-
dates, sure.
Well, seeing as how this is the second Monday, do you want to wait until the second Monday of May? It's only April, right?
It is
That'd
only,
be May 12th.
it seems like a long time,
Yeah.
Especially when your window is only 180 days.
but that's what we're saying that we are capable of doing, right?
I'm not.
What time is your workshop? On the fourth.
Yeah, I've got quite a bit of.
It's like
And
almost
almost
a month away.
Listen,
Yes, Steve.
I completely agree with what Shelley just said as to the purpose of this committee. But there's probably nothing prohibiting you from briefly tabling that issue to see if there's interest in 195.16. And if you reach unanimous conclusion that there's interest in 195.16, what the hell would be the point of doing all this work?
Because your town voted for us to do this work.
I understand that, and as did Langdon. But if the 10 of you reach the conclusion that this is not a good idea, and vote 10-0 right away, that this is not a good idea, you could pursue the other path.
And I would argue that that would not be doing the voters of Walpole that wanted us to do this study, and the voters of Langdon that wanted us to do this study, to turn around and shoot them down immediately because this small group feels that it isn't the right thing, is not justifying what they voted for.
I would agree.
The voters told
I
us
also
what to
think
do
there's
and we
value
need
in
to
maybe
follow
sitting
through.
down, for example, opening something up, you know, just speaking for Walpole. I don't think the majority of people understand the scope and the sequence and what we just discussed today. And I'm not saying they wouldn't, again, still come to the same conclusion, but but I think that both things can happen at the same time. You have to do what you were charged with. People also have to manage their expectations though, as to what this is.
A lot of work. And they're different hurdles, because 16 comes under your articles of agreement and requires a 2/3 vote across the district. Not every town, but overall 2/3 vote. That's probably a more difficult hurdle than the other half. So
And
it would depend on just how much support there was for that. If that support is mixed, I wouldn't bother going down that road, but if it seems overwhelming,
So,
we did, as a board, decide that if
yeah.
the 195-25 study passed, we were putting 116 or 16A on hold. And so,
It's fine.
I don't know how anybody could make an informed decision about the 16 without the information we're gonna get here anyway. How could you? I mean, you can sell it easier, like you said, Steve, you can sell it a lot
Not
easier,
necessarily easier, it might be harder.
but how would you do it? I mean, it's the same questions. If you decided to shut the district down for K through 8, Langdon's gonna be in the same position as if we voted to leave out of this committee. So,
It's a more critically thinking path.
What it leaves out is the residual cooperative.
What it leaves out is that the vote was to do this.
Yeah.
What it leaves out is, would any of us at the national level or the state level appreciate someone discounting our vote? Because, oh, you don't understand. I take exception to that thinking, because in a broader sense, I think that's very disruptive. The voters told us to do it. We put it out there. Doesn't mean that we get partway through and we say, it's clear this isn't gonna work. It doesn't mean that, but it does mean that our voters told us what we needed to do.
So we need to at least look at it.
Exactly, it's our responsibility. So, having said that, we need to get a little more organized, I believe, before we wait a month for a meeting to get started. Can we come up with an interim meeting where we all go, we read, we make sure we're really familiar with this RSA in the section that we need to be, and once we're up and going with the drive, I don't know how long that's gonna take, where I really would like to look at the meeting notes.
I can
that you
actually
mentioned.
I'll send you those now before we even get the SAU60, because those are all public. It's all public information. It
Okay,
was on the
thank you.
website back then. So I'll send that tonight.
Whatever we might need.
Yep.
Yeah,
so. Ma'am,
sure.
the 21st is the day after Easter, so I don't know, we just shouldn't be doing that.
Okay,
Because the bunny came the next day or the day before.
okay.
May 5th is Cinco de Mayo, and we should respect that. I'm just
It's
saying,
gonna be good.
we should. And then the next day would be the 12th, so. I mean, in my mind already, I had a school board meeting for the 28th, do we?
Yes.
Oh, we can't do that.
You did it St. Patty's Day.
Did I?
Yes.
Yeah, but I think I had a problem with it, didn't I?
I don't know.
Wasn't I like, how do we?
I just was perturbed. I was like, I want to know
Let's
this.
keep it short.
Yeah, it looks like maybe
Let's
May,
ruin everybody's holiday.
looks like May
It's
5th is
Passover
the
right
day.
now, and we're here meeting, so.
And we can't have chicken salad on Cinco de Mayo
That would
day,
just
that's
be wrong.
not right.
So
There's no
roughly,
chicken on Cinco de Mayo.
we can bring appetizers, have that, but roughly speaking, if we can do Cinco de Mayo, we'll call it, if we can do Cinco de Mayo with the idea that we will look at the RSA, look at the meeting, look at the information from the previous, and come with ideas as far as the subcommittees, what might work, be thinking about where your own personal knowledge, where that might sit you best in which committee. And I think it's worth potentially thinking of community members seeing about, do we have somebody who's particularly knowledgeable in one area or another that they might join us and help gather information and carry some of the load from our communities if they're so willing.
So what will drive the agenda for this meeting?
This meeting will drive the agenda will be figuring out what our subcommittees will be, figuring out we'll gather more information. Maybe I'm kind of looking to Misty and that kind of information about how we have others participate. Do they have to come in person? Do we discuss? How do we go about that? And it'll basically be getting our game plan to move forward so that we can kind of have an idea of what's coming up next and we're not stumbling through.
I think in addition to that, as you're reading those minutes, be looking at where data was requested in those minutes. Maybe they're already fulfilling some of that, but coming with data requirements that you think are important, because that's gonna be the long pole in the tent, getting that data. And we need to start that data mining soon. So I know that
Okay,
they're gonna
and they're
start
on it.
bringing some of that up already, but as people start reviewing those minutes, look for data that you think you're gonna need.
Are we able to cap this? I mean, I understand that you can't, assign an exact time, but for people who have children and jobs and things like that. Can we put like a scope for at least this meeting?
As far as the timeframe?
Yeah.
Can we keep it a similar timeframe to, with always with the intent that we will have it be shorter, but a 2-hour window for that?
Yeah, I think any more than 2 hours is,
Yeah.
I don't know what we would be doing that.
Right.
Constructively.
Well, and the aim is always less, but
Right.
also with the respect to people who need to have a time frame to get home. If we always think in terms of 2 hours if possible, and then, trying to keep, side conversations down and just hitting our bullet points.
So in anticipation of, this committee meeting and asking for data, Lori Schmidt, the business administrator, and I sat down and we went through the reports, that were presented to the state, DOE. And so she's already working with someone to have all of the information that was included in those reports pulled. So I can't tell you how soon that will be done, but we started on this a couple weeks ago.
I appreciate that.
So thank
We
you, Deb, to
appreciate
that point, could you get that information from them? And then the conversation would be what additionally would we want, just so we're not, does that make sense?
No.
Like if Deb and Lori can say, we've already got these things as, kind of common sense outliers that we know are gonna have to be collected. If our conversation on Cinco de Mayo is what we would want to augment, if there was anything we want to add to their list, I think that would be a more effective use of time than going through everything you've taken the time to identify.
You mean going through it before the meeting? Is that what you're
Just seeing what else, if the purpose of the 2-hour meeting is to essentially kind of put together what needs to be collected on the data front. If they've already identified things, I would think an effective use of time would be, what else do we need? Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
I just don't want us to spend 2 hours identifying what you guys have already put it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I don't have access to the drive yet. You might.
If I do, I don't know.
I don't think it's live yet.
I don't have a school email. I don't have access to anything with the school. So
Okay.
maybe that's something you could help out with, is look at what's in there. And
We
if
don't
there's
have it.
more,
It's
but
not-
I think
I-
as we
yeah, I
figure
think
out,
so.
looking through the RSA, looking through that'll give us an idea of what the larger information we're looking for. Because I think it's important we target our subcommittees. I think that's a valuable use of that next meeting's time, because we need to know who is zeroing in on what information. And maybe our following meeting, those committees can then get an idea of, oh, we're gonna need more in this area just to be helpful to them, but you've got a head start on that, and that will be helpful to us to be able to dig through, so.
Maybe Lori can at least give us like a report name and a synopsis of them, not the real data yet, but just tell us what she's already
Yeah,
pulling.
she's on vacation and she's coming back tomorrow, so I'll have that conversation with
That's
her.
a nice visual.
I have a question about how you see bringing these subcommittees together, like how will you do an outreach, or how does that work? Will you have people from the different towns come here on the 12th?
Well, I think the next meeting, my vision is we've all thought about whether there's other people that would be qualified to be joining the various committees. We'll have access to the minutes from the last group that had the last withdrawal study that had their different subcommittees. We have access to the RSA that will give us the information as far as roughly what subcommittees we're targeting. And then from there, at our next meeting, we can discuss how we want to deal with adding people in to the groups.
Do we just need folks from Langdon and Walpole or all 5 towns? Anybody
You can
Any
bring
town,
from
really.
anybody.
from the
Yeah. It
subcommittee?
doesn't have to be from the district, it can be,
That's right. If you have a friend who's an expert and happens to live in Westmoreland and you think they could bring valuable information, if you bring it to this committee and get approved, then that's okay too.
Okay.
Any way that you can get the best report together is valuable.
But also what I was taking, what was gonna, I think Miss Steve was gonna, I'm not sure who was gonna find out, but we were gonna figure out how that person joins the committee exactly, and they are not voting members,
Right.
but just making sure that we vote and
I guess
approve them in an
so-
appropriate manner.
My question is, are we relying on these people here to bring other people in, or are you gonna do an outreach?
Oh, like a separate, that
Yes.
was not my plan to do a separate outreach as much as all of us getting an idea from reading up on the information, getting an idea of the pieces that we're gonna need for that. I haven't done this either, so you're gonna have to bear with me. I'm learning as we go along and
Yeah,
my first time chairing and happy to do it, but it might be bumpy.
okay.
So if you have any thoughts before the next meeting, around who might be hopeful, I think that might be helpful to us carrying the load or getting all of the information is get the best reports and make the best decision we can. Okay. Any other questions, comments?
So May 5th, 5:30 here.
That's right.
I make a
Those
motion
snacks
to
allowed.
adjourn.
One second. One quick second. There's the 3 of you that do not currently have district email. In the next couple of days, IT will reach out to you to do an online just security training. And then if you could come maybe 10 minutes before the next meeting, IT will help you kind of get set up and going. In the meantime, I'll send you the 2020 withdrawal information.
Thank you. Other than that, everyone else can access it.
Everybody else has an SAU60 email address.
Okay.
Can we get, I don't have like everybody's email address because I'm not part of the district. Can you send me something and please have everybody?
So I'm gonna actually, once everybody's established, Joe, I'm gonna set up a email similar to the school board link.
Oh,
That will include everybody, so you,
okay.
but
'Cause if
keeping
I
in
had
mind
some
that you
ideas, I
can't,
would
just
know
like
how to
regular
teach
meeting
you.
laws. Keeping in mind that just like regular, we can't talk amongst each other.
Well, I
You'll
know,
have
but I
to-
mean, I used to be able to talk to the chair.
Yep.
Not make a quorum,
Yes.
so I wanted to, I don't even have the chair's email address.
Yeah, everybody's email address will be there, so you can
Thank
reach
you.
out. Yeah.
Okay. Cinco de Mayo, 5:30, plan for 2 hours, but we'll work for shorter.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Thank you.
Aye. Thank you all.